The following program was sponsored by friends and partners of the Lift Up Jesus Ministry.
I'm sure anyone who's watching this, you heard the news of when Hamas attacked Israel, came across the border, and committed some of the most evil acts that I've ever witnessed or seen on television from the news reports. And I wanted to kind of get your view on where you were, what you heard, how has it affected you, and the depths of the pain that you and your congregation are experiencing right now. Hi, it's Pastor Dudley Rutherford of Shepherd Church. I want to thank you for joining us on today's broadcast. Today, just because of all the events that are happening in Israel, I have so many questions and just wondering what's going on in that part of the world and really in the hearts of Jewish people here in America and over in Israel. So I invited a friend of mine who I've known for a long time. He's a rabbi, Rabbi Ron LaPaz. I invited him to come in so we could sit down together, have a discussion about these events. I think you're going to be blessed. I want you to welcome Rabbi Ron LaPaz. Hi, it's Pastor Dudley Rutherford, Senior Pastor, Shepherd Church, and we're actually inside the church, and I'm here with my dear friend, Rabbi Ron LaPaz, who you are the head of the Valley Outreach Synagogue.
I am.
Here in the San Fernando Valley. And how long have we known each other?
I think around 20 years. 20 good years so far.
Around 20 years, and you've actually been in this building before, right?
We were in this building even when it wasn't a building, when it was a parking lot. We were in your old campus here at Shepherd, the old sanctuary that was, thanks to you and your leadership team, was home to us for the holiest days of our year. Just to consider that, what that meant to this Jewish community to be in this church, housed and hosted so graciously then. And then when you built this and said, come with us, our home is your home, it was just overwhelming. And since you've been in this gorgeous sanctuary, we've been here with you again and really come to know who you are, not only you, Dudley, but the people that you surround yourself with. When I was here only a few weeks ago for Yom Kippur or for Rosh Hashanah, not anticipating that I'd be here today dealing with tragedy and trauma and loss and pain that all of us share for what's happening in Israel, one of the things I said a few times, but the last words I said before we left this sanctuary, is just take a moment, I said to my community, and make contact with somebody who works at Shepherd Church. Just notice how they are in the world. If somebody asks you if religion and faith makes a difference in people's lives, do a little documentary study. Follow these people around. See how they are when you're watching them in public places and how they are when they're in private places. This is a warm, extraordinary, loving group of people. Beautiful, beautiful community that you lead.
Great words. And, you know, here at Shepherd Church, we've been here for over 100 years, really, but Ron and his congregation, they needed a place to hold their High Holy Days, and so we have church here on weekends, and during the High Holy Days, we allow his congregation to come in here. We just have a great relationship, and when word broke about what happened in Israel this past week, we started texting and talking, and we just thought it would be good for us to get together. I certainly want to express to you our love and support to the Jewish people, to the nation of Israel, and thought it would be good for our church, thought it would be good for your congregation, for us to just get together and let them see the unity that we have and how we can help each other during these critical times. So the purpose of this is to talk about the current events in our world and what's happening right now in the nation of Israel. And this last week, I'm sure anyone who's watching this, you heard the news of when Hamas attacked Israel, came across the border, and committed some of the most evil acts that I've ever witnessed or seen on television from the news reports. And I wanted to kind of get your view on where you were, what you heard, how has it affected you, and the depths of the pain that you and your congregation are experiencing right now.
I can, but I want to preface it if I can, which is to say that a number of years ago, when we were handling another war with Gaza, with Hamas, same organization, but not on the scale of what we just experienced, I was with you, Dudley, and you said something to me that I've shared with my community many times. And you said to me, if ever your people are in danger, we are going to take care of you. Our doors are going to be open to you. And that's just resonated with me. And when you and I have been texting this week about this conversation, what are we going to do in solidarity with each other and with Israel? That's always in the back of my mind, your sincerity and your love. So it was Shabbat when this happened. And it was Simchat Torah, which is Simcha means joy. Just think about that irony, that tension between a day of Jewish joy when we're celebrating the Bible itself, we're carrying the Torah scrolls, the Bible around and dancing in synagogues, and at the same time we were viciously attacked. Let's take it to biblical places for a moment. We had our early attack in the book of Exodus when we were journeying from Egypt out into the desert, and we were attacked, we know, from the rear, and we were attacked in a surprise attack by Amalek. And the rabbis often look at that and they say, look how that's recurred in history. Not just once were we attacked, and what happened in that attack from Amalek is that he didn't attack the strong in the front, the leaders. He and his people, his band of brothers, attacked the most vulnerable, the women and the children, the elderly, which is exactly what happened. So I think to say that I was stunned is beyond words. I don't think we really understood the severity of the attack. I think what we understood the moment that it happened, the moment that we got news of what happened with Hamas's attack on Israel, was just shocked that it could have happened. I think that was the first response, which was maybe not yet emotion, but disbelief that Israel, this incredible stronghold, could be attacked in this way, could be made vulnerable. And then we started hearing more and more reports, and of course, because of WhatsApp and all Facebook and Messenger and texting, family members, because all of us have family members, we're all a family, reach out to each other and say, this person's been shot, this person's hospitalized, this person's missing, this person's injured. And we started to realize the severity and the cruelty of what happened. Bear in mind that if we put this in population terms, this is the equivalent to about 34,000 Americans being killed in a day. Think about what that is in relation to what we experienced on 9/11. For the Jewish people, this is the largest, most cruel and severe attack since the Holocaust, which painful in itself merely to remember the Holocaust, but now to have this new memory. 50 years ago, we were commemorating, I should say this week, we were commemorating what happened 50 years ago, an attack on our holiest day, Yom Kippur, when the same thing happened. It was a surprise attack. And we swore, of course, that we would never be surprised again, and yet, lo and behold, here we are, having been surprised. What we won't be surprised about will be anything that comes in the future, I believe. I think we'll be prepared, our eyes will be wide open, and we'll focus on doing what has to be done, not to just stop the violence temporarily, which is what we've done every time, put a Band-Aid over the wound. We've come to negotiations and said, let's just make this stop for now. What Israel's come to realize now, and I think what all moral people see in the world today, is this has to stop. The people of Israel cannot live under that threat. The people, Palestinians of Gaza, of the West Bank, of anywhere else in the region, cannot live under this threat anymore. So the goal of the military leaders, the government leaders, in solidarity with all of us, is to make sure that Hamas is eliminated. But I think it's important to think about morality in war. And one of the things that we know that Israel's known for is to take a moral stance in war, to make sure that we minimize casualties and make sure the casualties, to the point that's possible, extent that's possible, are limited to combatants, terrorists, rather than the civilian population. But inevitably, when you're in urban warfare, think about our soldiers who went into Fallujah. They were in urban warfare. They were walking in narrow alleys between houses. There is going to be civilian casualties. We know that. We have to just remind ourselves of the cause of those deaths and then weep with the mourners.
Ron, when you, even sharing there, this is the largest number of people that have been killed since the Holocaust. I never can figure out where the hatred for Jews worldwide, I mean, it is worldwide, and it's not just today. It seems like for all of time there's this hatred for Jewish people. And where do you think that hatred comes from? And is there ever an end to that? But I don't understand, even going back to Nazi Germany, how Hitler wanted to rid the world of Jews. And then we see this attack this last week by Hamas, how Iran screams at the top of their lungs, death to America, death to Israel. And it really is their charter to destroy the nation of Israel, to wipe every Jewish person on the face of this earth off the face of the earth. How do you live with that? How do you deal with that? Where does that hatred come from, and how does it ever end?
Jew hatred has existed for millennia. During the Greco Roman times, we were rejected because we weren't part of that society. We didn't adhere to their customs. We were called lazy because we took one day off the same day every week for the Sabbath and didn't work at all. So there were a lot of, just think about early tropes of anti-Judaism that then made their way into, well, let me go back. We were seen as separatists, as choosing to be separate from the societies in which we lived, because we ate according to the laws of the Torah. We ate kashrut, which meant that we wouldn't sit at the same table with our host nations, with the people who ruled over us, with the people in our midst. We would have our own plates and our own dietary laws, as you and I know. So one of the things that did was created a sense of them and us. Then when you come to early church, you start to see the same kind of divisions of those who do follow Jesus and those who don't, whether they were Jew or pagan. And then you come later to the Middle Ages, and then you have things that are so preposterous that they're kind of ridiculous when you think about them. You have the blood libel that came in the Middle Ages. And the blood libel that made its way all across the world was this idea that Jews murdered Christian babies and extracted their blood to eat it, and particularly when? Using matzah during Passover. Now, if you know anything about Jewish law, and I'm teaching Leviticus in the synagogue right now in our Bible study, one of the things you know is we don't eat blood. So the whole idea is just, it's idiotic, it's ignorant of Judaism and Jews. There's never for a moment in history been evidence of it. That leads to what comes in the, I'm going in very broad general terms through millennia of Jew hatred, leads to a book that was published that was meant to be true but ended up being proven to be a forgery. You may be familiar with it. It's called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It was found to have been a Russian forgery. And the idea that it purported, and think about Louis Farrakhan's words, think about Jew haters' words, quoting from that text and quoting the essence of that text. The idea was that there's a cabal. Jews around the world control media and control banking and control all levers of power in any society, and therefore should be A, not trusted, B, feared, and ultimately C, destroyed. Jews, how did Jews end up having a reputation in relation to money, for instance, when you think about anti-Jewish tropes? Well, one of the reasons, the primary reason, is because we weren't allowed other professions. So money was always considered to be dirty, and if you were in the aristocratic society of Europe, you weren't handling money, and at the time when Jews were limited in terms of the kind of professions they were allowed to work in money and in trade. So then when societies would fall into trouble financially, the Jews were blamed. What did Hitler do in the 1930s? He blamed Germany's economy on Jews. Well, that made sense if you grew up with your great-great-grandparents telling your grandparents, telling your parents that the source of all ills in economy always had to do with Jews, because they were the ones ultimately who were in control. For centuries, Jews had to wear badges that showed they were Jewish, so that you'd walk in the street and it wasn't a chosen badge, let's say a yarmulke that I choose to wear, but it was a circle that you had to wear on your clothing. So the people meeting you in the street and in the marketplace would know that you were Jewish. If you were living in the Muslim world, you had to wear a certain hat. You had to wear signs always so the communities would know that you are other. And what do we do with the other? Think about the other in your midst, whether it's people who believe differently, practice their lives differently, look differently. We tend to think of ourselves as different, and therefore usually, because we have ego in everything we do, superior. And that's in a nutshell how we get to this place. But we've got to remember, though, the Middle East. The Middle East has a different color. The color there is Jew hatred based on our living on the land, Jews and Christians, that shouldn't be inhabited by or even touched by Jews. That's according to some strains, radical strains, hateful strains of Islam. So you get an organization like Hamas that doesn't say that their goal is, that this war is, that attack is in aid of settling the peace, of coming to an understanding and finding which land will be yours and which land will be ours. They're not interested in that. Look at their charter. They say they're interested in one thing, which is destroying the Jews, eliminating the Jews, killing the Jews. When you see people in Chicago and New York walking in the streets with picket signs, with placards that say, "From the river to the sea," they're not just talking about beautiful places in Israel, the Jordan River, the Mediterranean. They're saying, wipe the Jews out, slaughter them, eliminate them, remove them from the river to the sea.
Because the river's on the east side and the sea's on the west, so they're saying rid the whole land.
Yeah, and if you think before the war, often people think that Israel is a result, an apology for the Holocaust. And I think it's really important that we know that it isn't. In 1920, that's a couple of years after the end of World War I, there was a conference of the Allied nations of the world deciding what should we do with the Middle East, what was the Ottoman Empire. They divided it up and they said, we will restore Israel to Israel, the people Israel, and they will live everywhere between the river and the sea.
I go back to the very first book in the Bible, Genesis, and I brought my Bible, and this is the very first book in the Bible. And almost 4,000 years ago, where God says to Abraham, he calls Abraham, come from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. A few verses later, it says, Abraham traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Morah of Shechem.
Yeah.
And that time the Canaanites were in the land, but the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring, I will give you this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. 4,000 years ago, God says this land belongs to his people.
Correct.
David, 3,000 years ago, names Jerusalem as the capital. Jesus, who we believe as Christians, spent time in Jerusalem, and we believe one day Jesus is coming back to the eastern gate there. But the people that are fighting and arguing and full of hatred don't believe the land belongs to you, correct?
Correct.
And you believe the land does belong to you.
I do, because I believe in that same text, and I revere that same text. And I think when God says this is the promised land, when God speaks, it's not in, I might give you this land, I might lead you there. I think the Hebrew is clear, I will lead you there. It is a promise. So from our biblical origins, we know this was our land. Israel wasn't the country, we are the people Israel, this is our land. That was always our relationship to it. Every day when Jewish people pray throughout history, wherever we are in the world, we face Israel and we pray toward Jerusalem. Our prayers every single day name Israel and name Jerusalem. It's fundamental to who we are. So the idea that the Jewish homeland, origin, place of birth and place of being should be anywhere else is anathema to Jewish people. That's a fundamental understanding of the world.
Going back to what happened a week ago, when Hamas came in and attacked through air, land, and sea,
right.
Some of the most brutal killing of that I've ever seen, as far as on social media, you can actually see it there. Something in me says I don't want to see it, and yet I think it's important to see. But where they came in and attacked women and children, one report said they killed 40 babies at one time. When all that happens in your congregation, do you shudder? Do you shake? Do you fear? Do you weep? Do you cry? What are some of the emotions when you saw what took place this last week?
I feel those emotions now thinking about that. It was an incredible thing to hear and then to see. You know, we live in a world in which reality isn't real unless we get to see it. And then we question it, and you can imagine that images of the Holocaust are questioned now because they say, oh, that's camera tricks, that's Hollywood. And that one day people might say the same about this. But let's remember that the people who are putting out these images aren't Israel's so-called propagandists. It's Hamas saying, we did this, we take pride in this. We want you to see the people who were murdered in that music festival, a peace festival. I'm really in two minds. There's a part of me that says, let's look away, but the moral part of me says the world won't be changed enough if we look away. I don't know if kids are listening to this broadcast and watching this, and I think every parent has to think about their own child, what they should and shouldn't be exposed to. But I think we as adults of all ages certainly need to look at these images, stare evil in the face, and maybe for once actually come to terms with the fact that it exists, that it isn't a political term, that it isn't just a social term invented by religion or even in universities, but there it is right in front of your eyes.
I want to state, as a human being, not just as a Christian, but as a human being, to see that is so disturbing, and to understand that evil does exist in our world, and we should stand together as human beings, not as Jews and Christians, just as human beings, we should all be standing against such evil. And when we state that, there is a group in the world, I don't want to say they lean left, but there's an ideology there that justifies this killing. They justify it by saying that Israel goes back to this land,
Of course,
that we believe God gave to Israel. The hatred still exists as Israel goes and begins to bomb the Gaza Strip, and by every appearance they're getting ready to go in.
Yeah.
Some 300 miles of tunnels underneath there. And I for one believe they have to go in. I'm sure you believe they've got to go in there, and there's going to be loss of life in that process. But to rid that part of the world of Hamas, I hope that's possible. I don't know if it's possible. We agree that we don't want any innocent lives to be lost.
Right.
There are going to be innocent lives that will be lost, which is true in all war. So we don't justify that, but evil has to be dealt with. Israel can't continue to live like that. But when they go in there and the world continues to shout and they try to turn this whole thing against Israel, that you deserve this, what do you say in response to those who believe that Israel deserved what happened to them a week ago?
Hi, I'm Kayla Francis, founder and executive director of Influence Her Group. Influence Her Group exists to help you discover and grow your God-given influence. We want to help you to see the truth of Ephesians 2:10 realized in your life. You're the precious work of God's hand. You were made to do and accomplish good, and all of that was prepared for you in advance. I'd like to invite you to visit our website, influencehergroup.com. Leave us your email address and check out some of the resources that we have made available. We offer events both online and in person that will help you develop yourself within a community of like-minded women. We'll see you there.
Research proves that it's the regular hearing and teaching of the Word of God that takes our Christian life to a new level. That's why we invite you to meet Dudley Rutherford every week on this station for another powerful message straight from the Bible. You can also visit liftupjesus.com to sign up for our monthly email devotional, discover Pastor Dudley's books and other resources, and see our national TV and radio schedule. And don't hesitate to reach out on the phone or online. Pastor Dudley has a passion and vision to reach more people with a message of hope. And if you'd like to partner with us to touch the world, we'd love to hear from you. Your financial gift will do so much to help us impact the nations for Christ. And if you're ever in the Southern California area, we invite you to visit us at Shepherd Church here in Los Angeles. It's an amazing experience you'll never forget. Until next time, remember to always lift up Jesus.
The preceding program was sponsored by friends and partners of the Lift Up Jesus Ministry.